6 police officers are facing disciplinary action for failing to stop the murder of a 31-year-old woman by her partner outside her home last year. Now, that hearing is taking place today, and covering it for us is our reporter Claire Paccalin. She's with me in the studio now. And Claire, tell us what happened in this particular case.
This really was a textbook example of everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. All the mistakes that could have been made were made. And we know this because the police of police, basically an investigative body which investigates possible police failings, has reported on this and has said there were a series of failings, coordination, communication, which meant that this woman's murder was not prevented by police. So what we know is, first of all, that Chahinez Daoud, her husband, Munir Daoud, he was imprisoned for several months for having carried out violence against her. They were separated. He was released early from prison, but she wasn't informed. She didn't know. She thought he was still in prison. And he tracked her down to a supermarket car park. He held her hostage in his van for 2 hours and beat her. She then went and made a complaint with the police. This is in March last year. And remarkably, that complaint was not taken seriously. The officer who received the complaint, really everything went wrong from this point onwards. The officer who received the complaint didn't fill in the paperwork properly. He asked her to fill in a form, which he should have filled in himself. He sent the dossier to the prosecutor's office, but he forgot somehow, didn't manage to actually include as part of the email attachment the initial complaint. The prosecutor's office got in touch. They sent it via post. It took too long. The complaint got buried under a mountain of a whole of other paperwork. And this man, who should have been back behind bars for having carried out this beating against his wife in this car park, he was able to just be free. And he wasn't even in hiding. The police could have easily tracked him down. They knew where he lived. He'd just been released from prison. He went to 2 parole meetings. He was not in hiding. They knew where he worked. And yet he was free to walk the streets, and he was free to go to her house on the 4th of May, and he shot her. And when she was on the ground trying to recover from her injuries, he doused her in petrol and he set her alight, and she was burnt alive a few meters from the house where she lived with her children. So remarkably, this series of failures is almost an understatement for what happened within the police department in Bordeaux.
Absolutely, a truly shocking case you document there, Claire. And this disciplinary hearing is taking place today. Talk to us about what we can expect to come out of this. Will the 6 officers involved probably be punished for what happened?
Well, this is what's interesting, and we're going to see what happens with this disciplinary hearing. Is the board going to look at this as in some police officers made major mistakes and they need to be sanctioned? Or are they going to look at a more general level? Did many police officers make smaller but, massive mistakes when it comes to the result of what happened? This woman's death was not prevented. Are we looking at a more structural, organisational issue? Now, we know that the Minister of Justice has come out and said he knows that there needs to be organisational and structural change to how these complaints of domestic violence are made here in France. This is not the first case. This case drew a lot of attention because of the horrific circumstances of Chahinez Daoud's murder. But there are many cases like that of women saying that their complaints have not been taken seriously by the police. So the Ministry of Justice is saying it knows it needs structural change on this matter. But of course, it comes too late for Chahinez Daoud and her 3 children. One tiny piece of good news that I can leave you with is that she had always said that she wanted her children to grow up in France. And her parents have been able to come over from Algeria, and they are bringing the children up, and the children are still in school. So one tiny, tiny piece of good news is that her children are still being educated here in France, which is what she wanted.
Claire Paccalin, thank you very much indeed for telling us all about that case.